Today we have with us one of Africa's finest, right? It's funny when you use that phrase, but just sounds cool. One of Africa's finest, uh, Adaeze Sokan, right? Adaeze is the director of design, strategy, and quality assurance, right? At Ventures Platform. And she'll be taking us on a very interesting journey today, talking about the importance of building and innovating for the mass market and how that can create prosperity across Africa. Right now, but before we go into that, I would like to do a brief introduction to those who are new to this webinar. This webinar is tagged Surviving COVID. It's a webinar that was designed to help businesses who have been affected negatively by the COVID-19 pandemic to come back to life and to be able to continue their businesses and hopefully also help people who lost their jobs or were impacted in any other way to start up businesses that would help them to create prosperity for themselves, their family, and the community as a whole. So this is why it is important that we are doing this, and it's important that we will be looking deeper into this topic today. So I'm going to hand over to Adaeze now to take us on this journey. Adaeze, are you there?
I am here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I consider it a great privilege to be here. So it's really nice to see, well, I'm not seeing you, but meet all of you. And I'm happy to be taking you all on this topic. Ololade, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Don't worry, we can hear you.
Okay. All right, good. So my topic today is innovating for the mass market. If you're not going to get anything from this session today, I want you to get this, right? If you're going to make revenue and create impact, you will need to create value for the mass market, right? And you create a lot of revenue and impact by creating solutions, whether it's a product or a service that solves a struggle, a problem for the mass market. And what does that mean? Find a whole lot of people that people are not necessarily serving, and understand the issues and the struggles that they have, and then, solve that problem. So create a product or a service that solves the problem for them in a way that they like it to be solved and they're willing to pay for it. I think that creating solutions for the mass market is not always charity. I think that there are sustainable business models that allow people like yourselves to create value and still be a profitable business. Businesses like Celtel, before we start having like a whole lot of telecommunication companies, Celtel pioneered telecommunication in Africa. So I think, and they are a typical example of a mass market product. And I'll talk about that.
Right?
Sorry, yes, mobile telecommunications. Yes, let's not mix it. So it's not landline, obviously. That's not Mo Ibrahim, right? So we're talking about mobile telecommunications. Henry Ford is an example of a mass market entrepreneur, because at first he created a product that nobody thought about. When they're thinking about innovating horses, they thought, let's create horses that can move faster. Well, cars, move faster. And the interesting thing is that it's not just about producing or inventing a car. It's the entire model around how they went about making the car and distributing the car. So getting the cars to hit a lot of people, and those that couldn't afford the car, they created a whole credit facility around that. And the great thing about the impact part of innovating for the mass market is, because of your product and because of your service, you tend to trigger national transformation, right? So when the car was designed and put in the market, it triggered the need for for roads. It triggered the need for transportation policy. It triggered the need for Julius Berger to have a business, right? Because they have to create more roads and maintain those roads. And great thing is that another quality is that the mass market product is mass market, like it's scalable beyond a region or your community or your affiliations. It's country to country to country around the world. So if you're thinking, and these types of people, these entrepreneurs, I call them market creating entrepreneurs, and I'll explain that in a bit, are definitely people that are thinking big, right? You're not we call them necessity entrepreneurs. And I do not say, and we're not discriminating or judging necessity entrepreneurs. And necessity entrepreneurs are the everyday SME type entrepreneur, right? That is just doing a business just to get by and put food on the table. That's fine. And there's a place for those types of entrepreneurs, even in the economy. I'm talking about
that bad.
It's not bad, it's a choice, right? And that's okay. But if you're going to be if you're the type of entrepreneur that we call market creating entrepreneurs, you need to put a lot of thought into being this type of entrepreneur. And you're the type of entrepreneur that can really transform nations. Like you can catalyze economic transformation in terms of the number of jobs that you create, in terms of the taxes that you pay because of the humongous revenue that you generate, and also the trigger that you create that, because you're creating access to opportunities and services that people didn't usually have access to before. So let's dive in. I've given you a sort of a brief intro and summary of what I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to break it down and tell you the how, in case you are interested in being that type of entrepreneur that is creating solutions sustainably for the mass market.
Can I add something that
okay?
I think the way I like to approach this is to say that, and this might just be my own definition, but if you want to be super rich, right, you need to create for the mass market. If that is super rich because you created for the mass market. Bill Gates became super rich because created for the
mass market.
Yeah.
Mass market.
Yeah.
So think about, I like the Bill Gates example, Ololade, very well. I mean, you know how computers were before. They used to feel like an entire room, right? And that's the concept of even innovating for the mass. When you think about a lot of people having these computers, how do you ship big computers like that? So the constant needs, and that's why the innovating is there, right? How do you constantly improve on processes and products and services and your entire business model in such a way that it serves a lot of people who actually need it? So it's not serving a lot of people because of the name serving a lot of people, is understanding that there's a struggle. People are struggling with some kind of type of access, whether it's in terms of affordability or distance or time, and you seize that opportunity and create that solution in a way that it ensures that you create the product and you distribute it until it gets to the mass market in a very efficient manner. So that's a really good example there, Ololade. So just to dive in, right? Look, I'm not going to pretend that I'm the one that came up with innovating for the mass market. It's not me, but I learned it reading this book. It's become my holy grail apart from my Bible. So it's the Prosperity Paradox, written by the late Clayton Christensen. He died last year. May he so rest in peace. And Efosa Ojomo, who is a Nigerian breed, and Karen Dillon. So this entire concept I'm going to be teaching you today is simplified based on this book. So if you want to learn more, I encourage you to find this book and read it line by line. There are lots of more examples that I will share there today. So when we're talking about innovating for the mass market, what does it actually mean? And it's important to gain understanding so that you know what you're doing. There are three things that you must understand, right? One, innovating for the mass market means that you're developing a product or a service in a way that's accessible to a mass of individuals and not just a small group of people in the society. I already sort of talked about that in my opening, right? It's a lot of people. If you think about it in the Nigerian context or in the African context, you're thinking about people who don't usually have access to certain services. I don't always like to say they're the poor, but in our context, they are the poor, right? Or somewhere between the low income to poor earners. Majority of those that fall within the middle income to elite group tend to have basic services. Does it mean that you can't innovate for those in the elite and middle income group? You can, but you just need to know what they're struggling with and how many of them comprise of mass. So you'll be looking at those groups, not just in Nigeria, but around the world. Okay. Second thing that you need to understand is that this mass market are typically called non-consumers. And you see this a lot in the book. These are people who have a need, but they cannot meet it because the available solutions are either too expensive or they're not within reach, or maybe because they are not skilled enough. So if you look at the African context, there's lots of, everybody is having access to internet. Well, you think that everybody has access to internet, but not everybody has access to internet. There are lots of people on the continent that are excluded from access to internet, or even, certain digital mobile devices. And because of that, they're not able to access opportunities for learning or for doing business. And they're excluded from the opportunities that the digital and the tech space provides. So how do you know a non-consumer? Non-consumers are people that they have demand, they want something. All right. And it's important to understand this, that they actually want something, but they can't get it for key reasons. One, they don't have the skill set. Either they don't have the skill set, or they don't have the money, or they don't have the time, or it's too far. They just can't reach it. Right. And these 4 factors are very good areas for you to spark ideas on or understanding the struggles that people face, so you know how to position to provide some kind of product or service. Those that develop for the mass market, so if you're saying, yay, I want to become this really cool type of entrepreneur, not that other entrepreneurs are not cool, but you know what I mean.
That's super
right?
cool, you mean?
Like super, super cool, right? Then you are called a market creating entrepreneur. And market creating is you're creating a new market. So you're creating a product that's addressing a market that nobody's thinking about or solving that struggle that they're facing. So let's look at some key examples. I'm going to use 2 examples. M-Pesa, I don't know if you know about M-Pesa. It's a mobile payments platform that is based in Kenya. They transact $4.5 billion monthly. Think about that.
That's a lot of dollars.
That's a lot of dollars, right? In this type of economy, that's a lot of dollars. They have 40,000 agents. So remember I talked about beyond raising revenue or being rich, like Ololade said, if you're doing this type of entrepreneurship, you're involved in national transformation. So they have 40,000 agents. That's a lot of people with jobs, right? Helping people to do transactions on the M-Pesa platform. And they've created access impact. So 22 million Kenyans as of 2019 now have access to financial services. So they are bridging the financial inclusion gap, right? So that's an example. And I'll talk about Group Bimbo bread. By the way, you think that this is a Nigerian business, but it actually started out in Mexico. And I want to believe that that person is actually Nigerian. They didn't say it in the book, but because there's Bimbo. Yeah. Anyway, so this business is grossing $14 billion annually just selling baked goods. So again, I use this example because people always think that it has to be tech. It doesn't always have to be tech. It has to be innovation. And our own innovation wasn't even the product, because there's nothing really innovative about the bread or the snacks she was baking. It was the way she went about processing it and distributing it that's innovative. And I'll talk about that. So she's serving 128,000 people globally, and they operate 165 plants in 22 countries. So let's start with M-Pesa. First of all, M-Pesa identifies the struggle that there are a group of people that don't have bank accounts. And because they don't have bank accounts, they cannot engage in the financial services process. So they can't make payments easily. They can't access loans. or credit facilities. They can't participate in insurance. They're excluded. They have to keep going into the bank, and some of them have to travel long distances to go to the bank. So there are banks on every street. So they understood the struggle and the pain. They understood that people wanted to be able to do business more efficiently. And so they created this platform that enables people to transact in financial services without having a bank account. And it's so popular and well known that even people abroad who go to Kenya always download an M-Pesa app. They download the M-Pesa app so that they can be able to transact efficiently while they are in the country. So that's a clear example of, number one, and also M-Pesa is not just used in Kenya alone. It's used in the East African region, with after the African policy that has been passed or endorsed by different African countries. They stand a chance to make this an African wide platform for everybody to use. There's a huge chance because M-Pesa is well known. It's studied in different universities as a case study for innovation in the financial services sector. The group Bimbo Bread, right, understood what was the struggle. People in Mexico were buying bread. This was a period where there was a lot of recession and depression, and they were trying to buy bread at an affordable rate, but they realized that the bread that they were going to buy had molds in them. And these were rich capitalists that were just trying to sell off bread to poorer people at an affordable rate, but they would sell bread that was contaminated. And the people would realize that it was contaminated when they bought the bread. So the packaging that they used was, dark, and it wasn't transparent enough for you to see. So it was until they bought it and they paid for it that they'll get home and realize that it was bad. And so she saw that opportunity, that bread is something that everybody wants to buy and eat quickly and affordably. And so she changed her model and used transparent bags, of course, made sure that the bread was fresh, reduced cost operations to ensure that the bread was fresh and she could still make profit. And so how did she do that with cost operations? Not only did she make the packaging transparent so that people can trust that her bread is mold-free, she also bought off some farmers. So, of course, because you know that the wheat that they use to make the bread is an essential ingredient, and to keep the price low for a lot of people to afford it, she had to, collaborate with some farmers, and in some cases start a wheat farm so that she could control the pricing on that. If you think about if you had to work with a farmer, depend on a farmer for your goods, you would have to factor in that price of the farmer into your cost, and that might jack up the price that you sell to your customer. So she understood that if I'm going to get people to buy this bread at an affordable rate, then I'll have to invest in farmers that are willing to partner, or I'm going to start my own farm. She also had to buy out some flour mills, right? So there's one thing to have the wheat, you still have to process the wheat. And to process that, she had to buy out some flour mills, again, just to bid down the price and control quality of the product. In addition to that, she had to also, because of producing the wheat and the distribution and making the bread, she of course had to hire a lot of people. So that's job creation right there. And in some cases they had to train the people that they were going to be working with them across their value chain. So these are just two examples, but I hope it drives home the main points. So the key things that you learn is what makes a market creating innovation, right? Number one, it has to have a business model that targets non-consumption. So it's a model that targets where there's no already product or service that's solving a struggle. It's not like a product that's already where you're like, oh, there's the sky is big enough for everyone to fly. That's not the type of that's not what this type of entrepreneurs do. These entrepreneurs actually go out for where is the struggle, and I want to fix that struggle for a lot of people, right? They understand the struggle and they're willing to adjust based on market feedback. So before they even go out and say, oh, we have a product, they're obsessed with understanding the pain points, immersing themselves with the people that are facing the issues and coming up with solutions for that. Number two is they use enabling technology to improve performance at progressively lower costs. So, and this technology here doesn't always have to be an app, right? Even in the case of Bimbo, the technology there was just the idea, the entire process of the value network that she had, of ensuring that everything was aligned with the objective of making bread more affordable and mold free. But also, it's also leveraging technology, and I'll give another example with Netflix and like a normal renting. So remember when we used to have like these video renting shops, right? America, they used to have that as well. Netflix actually used to be a video rental. Like you would order for a CD and they would, deliver that CD to you, and then you go and drop it in the postal service delivery. That's how Netflix used to operate. But now they've realized that it's a struggle for people to be going and be dropping CDs. You could forget and you could get charged extra. And so it's like, hey, why don't we just make this on a platform over the internet, and everybody has, you just pay monthly subscription and everybody has access. And that you could see scale there, because everybody can do that once you can, because there's payment systems that enable everybody to do, so that once you have the internet, you have that. And that caters to a lot of people around the world. So technology also helps you scale. That's the message in there. Third is a new value network, so that your product is affordable to non-consumers. Remember in the Bimbo situation, right? She had to buy out, some flour mills, or even start her own farm, just to make sure that things were affordable. And that's why, again, I said this type of business is not just for any business. You have to really think about your main obsession is that you're able to solve that struggle for the lots of people going through it. The fourth thing is, so with the new value network, you're constantly thinking, how do I reduce my cost of operations, so that my pricing is affordable to everybody. Remember that affordability could be a barrier that people struggle with to access services of certain products. Fourth thing that you need to think about is you may need to develop an independent architecture so that the product gets to and serves non-consumers. I'll give an example with Toyota, right? Toyota started out with, we just want to sell cars, right? But they realized that they didn't have a lot of staff, like the management team, for them to scale. So for them to scale their operations, they were partnering with a recruitment firm, but it wasn't working as well. So they had to come up with their own training structure, right? And I think they call it a Toyota management system now, that is even adopted around the world as like a management technique for businesses to use. But because they were trying to make their end goal work, they had to develop like a training school as part of their value delivery process. So independent architecture means that sometimes you may have to create a whole new plan just to make sure that your work, everything, your value you provide value to your customers at scale. Number 5, you need to have a business profit formula. Like I said, it's not a charity case. This is a business, but there's a possibility to make profit out of serving the mass market. The international scene, they're calling this restructuring capitalism. So where capitalism was all about profit, and ruthless execution, now they're saying, make your profit, but also think about the environment, think about people, think about giving back, think about impact. So it's still business. So in creating your solution, you have to be sure that your business is profitable, and your business is profitable when your costs are down. And lastly, like I said, it's not just high-tech solutions. It's really about transforming your processes. It's also about transforming processes in a way that makes your product of greater value to your target market. So how do you go about creating a product or service? I just talked about characteristics of an innovation that serves the market, the mass market. But if you're thinking now, okay, I see that this is great. I see that there's tendency for me to make lots of money here. I can also not just make money, but also create national impact, jobs, and I can, make people's lives better. If this is you and you're interested in this, these are 3 things that you need to bear in mind as you start thinking about the product or service that you want to create. Number one, you have to look for evidence of non-consumption. I've said this before, but it's worth repeating again. You need to understand the barriers that are preventing consumption. So you can start with a desk research to understand what other countries are doing. Think about your own experience. What are those things that has really like pinched you, that have hurt you, that you feel is a struggle and you feel like something should be done about it? Something that's a struggle for me that I am deeply passionate about is the fact that Nigeria has 13.2 million kids out of school. And I realize it's not just a Nigerian problem, it's an African-wide problem. And so I've really been thinking and cracking my head around a business, and I found one, but a business model that tackles that problem in a way that's sustainable. So you need to understand what the issues are. Even in having conversations with people, they will tell you, oh, I know I'm supposed to go to the hospital, but I don't want to go to the hospital. That's an opportunity. You want to ask why. Is it a money problem? Is it that they waste your time when you get there? There's like lots of queues, or you don't trust the doctors. Do you understand? So, but in digging deep and understanding those fears, it's a pointer to, what a potential product or innovation for mass market product or service would be like. Once you have this evidence that there's actually a struggle here, then you want to confirm that there's a lot of people that are having this struggle. So you want to confirm that the non-consumption market is significant, is huge, because the idea of making these billions of money that you've seen in the evidence of M-Pesa and Bimbo Bread is that there are lots of people, right? They're able to make those billions of dollars because they're able to prove there are lots of people that need this and they need it consistently, right? So you need to be able to confirm what are the numbers, how many people will actually use this, and how many people are struggling with this issue, how many people are in the market, right? And then you do the math to figure out, okay, if this number of people are in the market, how much money, profit-wise or gross-wise, will I make if I sell to one person multiplied by the total number of people that are in the market? That gives you an idea of how much you'll be making monthly or periodically. And lastly, you want to create a new value network. So here's where it's really juicy and interesting, right? You want to get all your flip charts and whiteboard and markers and get a couple of people that are your friends, trusted friends that you can work with, and just really reimagine what it will be like to provide this value. How do I ensure that this value is quality and it gets to this non-consumer in a way that's efficient? When you map it out, you will map out an ideal situation. You will see that there are cost centers out. Might want to push up the pricing from 0.2 up. The question you want to ask yourself is, okay, what do I need to bring this thing down? Do I need to set up my own part of this distribution, my own architecture in this value network so that I can really serve my people? Or other people that you can partner with that will still keep your pricing in a range that is affordable to the people? So you want to be able to look at the value network. You don't just create a product in isolation. You want to think about all the steps that are involved in taking the product from producing it, manufacturing it, to when it gets to the doorstep of the non-consumer. I already talked about the benefits. So obviously there's wealth for shareholders, right? So you and all the people that have invested in your business stand to get a lot of money. You become that company that everybody is talking about because of the massive impact that you're making, the national transformational impact that you're making in terms of jobs created, in terms of the access that you provided because you solved the struggle, in terms of the revenue that you've generated, and in terms of also you being a catalyst that triggers other types of growth. If you look at Uber now, Uber is some sort of innovation for the mass market, right? Because a lot of people are being empowered. All the Uber drivers all have side hustles, right? And it's serving a lot of markets in different parts of the world. If you think about airplanes and cars, before they became airplanes and cars, they triggered the need for ministries of transportation, right? And the need for policy and regulation. It triggered the need for businesses, other smaller businesses to start up because they know that, if you have a car, you can actually come to the restaurant and eat food. So this is my last quote. I'm going to say that being a market creating entrepreneur is not for the faint-hearted. It requires boldness, it requires determination and passion to actually relieve people of these struggles. Once you can do this, it will be really rewarding for you, not just for you, but also for the nation and the world. Thank you, and I will take any questions now.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Adaeze, for that presentation. Really, 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 really good one. I have a few questions here, but for to everyone watching, everyone on the webinar, if you have a question, you can just submit your question in the chat box, and then I'll read it out to Adaeze so she can answer. But while we wait for people to drop their questions, I have a few questions here. The first question is it important that market creating innovation is designed for the poor? Or are there this kind of innovation or this kind of businesses or this kind of ideas that can be designed for maybe not, I wouldn't say the rich, but people that are not poor. Let me put it that way.
Okay, let me first of all debunk the notion, right, that innovating for the mass market means innovating for the poor, right? It's just that the poor constitutes the mass market. So people just say, yeah, it's for the poor, but it doesn't always mean it's for the poor. It just means that you're creating a solution that everybody can have access to if they wanted to. So if we had the car, like the car situation, for example, you've created this car, great, the rich can afford it, awesome. Or you've created different models of it so that the rich can afford it and the poor can afford what they can afford. And if they can't afford it, they have access to credit facilities that allow them to afford the car. So it's innovation, it's innovation thinking, the mindset that makes your product accessible to anybody should they choose to accept it. So I could create a product that the rich people could have access to if there's a real struggle and there's a real market for it. Great, and that's still innovating for the mass market, right? It's still innovating and solving a non-consumption problem. And I could choose to innovate for the poor because there's a real struggle here. Or I could innovate for all of them and say, you know what, I'm going to make sure that both rich and poor have access. And I'll use Celtel as an example, or mobile companies, right? They started off with, buying data and credit, and realized that it became, it was also quite expensive for poor people. But we need to know that poor people also need to have mobile phones because everybody wants to talk to people like on the phone. It's hard to communicate without a phone. And so the scratch cards became an innovation stream, right? So I could, being wealthy, I can decide to buy credit on my phone, like, and or I could do the scratch card. Even that innovated that part and made the star 737 star or star 400 hashtag. So the idea is that there's mobile phone. It's not just for the rich, it's also for the poor. But the idea is, how do I make sure that everybody has access at their different levels?
All right. So to the next question. Thank you very much for that answer. I also would like to say that whether you're rich, whether you're poor, in Nigeria today, if there's every chance that the house or the building you're in, it was built with Dangote cement, right? There's every chance that you use Dangote sugar or salt, right? So I just wanted to chip that in. The next question here is, why must we create new markets? Must it be something new, or must it be new? Is it
No, actually, no. So let's use Dangote since you're using that example.
Okay.
Before Dangote came in with sugar, there was sugar already. It's not like he invented sugar. He didn't invent sugar, right? So there was already sugar. But what makes him very successful is that he made that sugar accessible. So they started selling at they will start selling in like, smaller quantities and in sachets and things like that. So it doesn't have to be completely new. Like, innovation is not an invention. It doesn't always mean that. There are 4 types of innovation, I think. So there's innovation where you're like just making something better. There's disruptive innovation where you're introducing something that's already existing, but to an existing market, but it's better, like the iPhone. The iPhone did not, is mobile phone. Like, it's just better. Right? But you have to be really sure that people would really use it, right? So they had like an edge, all of that. Sometimes it's a completely new product entirely. So it doesn't always have to be new. It's about making things better. So if it doesn't exist, then you create something new. If it exists, then it's about how do we make it better?
Okay. All right. We have a question from Samuel. It says, in a situation where your business will help solve a problem, but also create another imminent problem, such as driving thousands into unemployment, is it still worth it?
And I'm sure you're creating some kind of digital products, and people's jobs, that people that are in the manual job markets might be affected. And this is an ongoing debate in the world scene, right? If you're going to be, again, the quick question is, what value are you providing, right? And if you think that this would be a struggle, the question is, maybe there's need to prepare those that would be out of work for the new type of work. Right? And that's even what is being said in the international scene. The fact that people will be out of work does not stop innovation from happening. The question is, you've identified another struggle, and how do you ensure that your business factors that in? So maybe another training program that prepares them for the future of work.
All right. I would like to add something to that. That, see, at every instance where innovation comes into the economy or the society, and it seems like it pushes people out of jobs, what eventually happens is it actually pushes them from one job to another kind of job.
Type of job.
Yeah. So if we go back to the age where people, most of the jobs that were available then were factory jobs, where it had to do with factory production.
Exactly.
When technology started booming, when they call it the internet boom happened, most of those people started developing other skill sets. In fact, started learning some other new skills. Some of them took jobs that they had to learn on the job to be able to do. Right. So it's always, this will always happen. This is a trend that happens within the society.
You're not the first person doing exactly. It. So so you could either have a training program, or you could just have an informative aspect of your business that, lets people know of new types of opportunities for work, and maybe be like a foresight type business. So you're painting the future of the type of work that people should be preparing themselves for. And that information is helpful. So it doesn't have to be like you have to start a training school. You could just, provide useful information through your blog that would help people make better choices for the future.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very Samuel for that. I hope that answered your question. There's another question from Samuel again. It says, does market availability always mean elevating a struggle? Ada, did you get that?
I heard you, but I'm not sure I understand the question. So does market availability, so that means that there are lots of people that need a product. Does that mean
you're solving a problem, essentially?
Does that mean you're solving a problem?
Yeah.
No. Again, the people that are available, do they have a problem? Right?
Maybe the best way to answer or maybe the next question to ask is, do the people who have the problem think they have a problem?
Think they have a problem. Is it a struggle for them? That's one. And if it's a struggle for them, do they want to pay for that struggle to be removed? So in the examples that we gave, in the M-Pesa example, obviously they're making that amount of money monthly. It means that people were willing to pay to access financial services. Or the Bimbo bread, people were willing to pay to get better bread than molded bread. And they were paying because it was affordable. So it's not just about saying, oh, there's a market. And most people do that. When you're doing your pitch deck, you would say, oh, this market is a $50 billion market, right?
And it sounds
okay,
big.
great. And it sounds big, but then they really don't care about your product. They don't have a problem. You are bringing something that they don't want. So in the first step, I gave you 3 steps, right? The first thing is, what's the evidence of a problem, right? And that's the starting point. The second thing is, how many people think that's a problem for them? And is that number huge? And then lastly is then, okay, now I can confirm there are lots of people here that think that this is a problem and they're willing to pay for it. Then I'm going to now create a whole business model to solve that.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a question. You know, you said it doesn't have to be tech related, or it doesn't have to be a tech business, maybe building an app or something. But does what role does leveraging technology play in really ensuring that this business can scale to as a critical mass of people, right? Even though it does not have to necessarily be a technology business.
Yeah. So the first is in operations, right? So just having technology that makes your operational work efficient. So either using software as a service, from like invoicing to even internal communications, and external communication. So even how you communicate with all the key players in your value chain. So there's the internal operational efficiency that technology brings to make your work smoother, rather than doing manual where you can make mistakes or it's a slower process. So there's operational efficiency that technology helps with. The second area that technology helps with, if tech is not a core part of your business, is in marketing. So there are lots of marketing techniques now reaching the people. You can't see everybody around the world, but technology gets you before everyone. So leveraging, Instagram, Facebook, and all the whole digital platforms that are available now is very key to distribute your product and get your product in front of everyone. So those for me would be like the two main ones. The last one obviously is, I'll say like tech personnel, right? So again, building software solutions for internal operations to make your work smoother. Like in a business, like the Bimbo bread business, they don't necessarily have an app, right? But they would have a website so people abroad that needed to place an order could see information. It was the basic website, right? And then they have software enterprise solutions, right? That manage their financials, accounting, and vendor agreements and all that, and HR. So all of those things can be automated. And technology helps with that process.
Okay, so next question: Does market creating innovation does it necessarily have to be cheap? Must it be cheap, right? Or is it okay for the price to just be all right?
Again, the pricing is a factor of all the costs, and this is normal business principle, right? The pricing is always a factor of your costs. So, but whether it's affordable or not is depending on the struggle of your market. So remember I said there are 4 barriers, right, that make people want to pay to get them resolved. One is their capacity to pay, affordability. So if that's a huge problem with your market, then you want to make sure that the pricing is more affordable. And they'll give you a hint as to what is more affordable, right? So it's either it's affordable or you create different variations. So you could, like I said, you could serve both rich and poor, right? So you have a variation that serves the rich, and you can use that to start off just to prove that this is a good solution, and test if like other people who can't usually afford it, if they really want it. And if they want it, you start creating smaller versions that they can afford. Or rather than creating versions, you could have credit facilities as part of your value distribution network that enables people to pay in installments until they complete their payments. And that's how the housing system even works in America, right? So everybody wants homes, and there are different types of homes. You could get one that's affordable for you, depending on what you earn or your income capacity. And both rich and poor need access to housing. And as people graduate the ladder, they have different options. And if they can't pay, they just need to prove that they can pay over time. And that's why there's that housing mortgage and the whole, business chain on its own. So yeah, to answer your question, it doesn't always have to be cheap. Like it has to be cheap because there's a case for it. There's evidence need that it needs to be cheap.
Okay. Okay. So in essence, can we say that it has to be affordable for the people who you are creating it for? Is that correct?
Rich or poor? Yes.
Rich or poor. Okay. All right. Cool. So now because creating or doing business or creating a business or innovating for the mass market essentially is all about scale. Most times we've seen entrepreneurs that do well when they're just starting out, but as they scale, the business begins to die or the quality of service drops, the quality of product drop. How can
Yeah.
you begin to prepare for that right from the beginning?
Very, very good question. And I think that's why a characteristics of this type of business or entrepreneur is that you're doing a business that should scale. And so that's factored into your planning. As you create your business model canvas, right? You need to bear that in mind. And that's also where the concept of jobs come into play, right? At least in most of those businesses. So you need to think about standard operating procedures, even right from now. So when you do the first pilot, you want to document your recipe, your processes. Of course, you have laws that protect your company from IP theft, but you have all of those things documented, and be ready to scale that. So, so you have to think that your business model can be replicable. If I move from Lagos to Enugu, how do I make sure that I have the same products, the same customer service, everything, the same way, and scale that across. It's the same way with Starbucks, right? If you go to any Starbucks, even though they have a different vibe or interior design in every location, the coffee is the same. The experience is the same. So all of that is what we call standard operating procedures. So all of that needs to be well documented. And of course, you need people. And that's why, one of the impacts of these types of businesses is that they create jobs, because it's inevitable that you need people to produce and distribute and sell it in different locations.
Okay. So now, and I'm driving somewhere with these questions. As the business scales, right, the demand becomes more, the demand from the customers, the demand from staff, because of course, as you're scaling, you're employing more people. You said it, that it's one of the things this does is that it creates more jobs. And I think we really need that right now because a lot of people have lost their jobs. So
Yep.
we need more entrepreneurs to create more jobs, right?
Yep.
But as that happens, most times entrepreneurs get overwhelmed by all of these demands, right? And I think that's what really leads to the drop in quality, and then maybe sometimes they even lose focus and things like that. Do you have any advice for an entrepreneur on some of the things they can do personally in their personal lives that can help them to overcome some of these challenges on the long run?
First is start with a pilot. I wouldn't rush to scale from now, right? When you're just thinking about the idea. It's good to think about scale, of course, that this business model is scalable. And you can think about that without actually having the product live. You can just think about that because you know that you have consumption people in different parts of the world. But in terms of starting out, you want to start out with a pilot. And in that pilot, you're testing how you're managing demand from that small corner. Once you've tested that, you want to have, number two, a standard operating procedure. So when you open shop in a different place, you just share that document and you onboard people with that. It says an onboarding document and a guide for people to follow so that they can replicate the same service. Number three, I would say that you need to differentiate the work. So this is about your team. You have to have a solid team that can specialize along the different demand areas. So if you just think about banks or any company that has skills, they have an efficient customer service base, right? And sometimes they may have to outsource some of those things. So if you feel like you don't have the internal capacity to handle some of the demands, you can outsource. And that's why lots of big companies are sourcing their customer service to India, right? Especially phone companies, because I mean, it's a lot for one entrepreneur to try and handle. So you could outsource some of those like big areas or heavyweight areas or functions. So the first thing is do the pilot, do a standard operating procedure. You will understand those key areas of your business. So whether it's customer service or distribution or marketing, once you outline all of those functionalities, then the question is, do you have the internal capacity to provide these services at maximum value? Do you need to start raising young marketers? Do you need to leverage agents to help with distribution of your work? So if you look at DSTV, they have lots of agents, right? Or M-Pesa, they have lots of agents. So it's not just them doing the distribution. They have people that are also earning from that process that are doing the groundwork for them. And then lastly, again, is as you scale, there's this you're just constantly learning and and improving on how you produce your product. So one, do a pilot, learn from it, understand your internal capacity, understand your functionalities, and then do your SOP, and think about areas that you can outsource or leverage partnerships. And yeah, that's what would be my advice.
All right, so Ada, you've said a few things, and I think the interesting thing is that Venthoven kind of offers some of these services. So something as simple as creating your SOP, standard operating procedure, building your team, hiring, managing your team as you grow, creating that
Yeah.
foundational framework for you to be able to manage your team as the team grows. Outsourcing some of the things that are headaches, that are termed headache for for entrepreneur, like
Yeah.
accounting, recruiting, staff management, and all of those other things. Venthoven offers those services. If you'd
Yeah.
like us to help you with that, you can reach us via email. The email address is hello@venthoven.com. And you can also follow us on social media. If you're watching this webinar on our webinar platform on venthoven.com, you can there's a button below that allows you to follow us on Instagram. You can click that button to take you directly to our Instagram page. We share some of these tips, tips on how you can grow, and of course, build more prosperity with your business, create more jobs on our Instagram account. So you can follow us for more about that. I think we've come to the end of this webinar. Thank you very much, Adaeze, for coming. Thank you for the very powerful presentation. I don't know if you have any final comments before we close.
We need to solve hard problems. Let's stop reinventing the wheel. If you really, really want to be an entrepreneur, really try and understand the struggles. I'm really tired of seeing ideas. Like, I just listened to a bunch of pitches like 2 days ago, and like 10 people had the same idea. Of course, people will have the same idea, but it would be great to really see people solving hard problems. So be bold, be determined, and go for solving those big, hard problems, and get support. There's also support, like Venthoven has said, yeah, they can even help you think through some of those ideas and concepts that you have and help you walk through planning that out. But yeah, let's do both things on the continent and for the continent.
All right. Thank you very much, Adaeze. Thank you. And thanks to everyone watching us. We hope to see you next week. Next week, we will be having one of, I wanted to say one of Africa's finest, but I already used that for
I thought I was Africa's finest.
That's a one of. All right. So Next week we'll be having, let me share that with us. Next week we'll have with us Olamide Johnson. I call him the master storyteller. He is going to take us on a very interesting journey on how you can build consistent business cash flow through storytelling. And Olamide has this is something he has practicalized. It's not theory, and we'll be sharing that with us next week. So let's be here next week. We'll start by 4 p.m. Let's also share this link with our friends. I often say that one of the things that we need to understand about these webinars and why it's important to share with people is that you might just be saving someone's business, and you might also be saving someone or giving someone or helping someone to start up a means of livelihood for themselves and for their families. So don't be stingy with this information. Share it as many people as possible. All right, everyone, we've come to the end of this webinar for today. Thank you very much, and thank you very much once again, Adaeze. I hope to see you all again